My name is Victor Furman. Some call me the Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me now and we will explore these topics and so much more with fascinating guests, authors, and experts who will guide us to Destination Unlimited. The Earth is calling, and the time to answer is now. As we face a global shift, healing our separation from nature is no longer optional. It's essential. Only by reuniting with the living Earth can we co-create a world where all life, human and non-human, flourishes. My guest this week on Destination Unlimited, Pam Montgomery, says we can accomplish this by co-creating with nature. Pam Montgomery is an herbalist, nature evolutionary, international teacher, and earth elder who has passionately embraced her role as a spokesperson for the green beings. A founding member of United Plant Savers and the Organization of Nature Evolutionaries, she's the author of 2 books, including Plant Spirit Healing. Her website is wakeuptonature.com, and she joins me this week to share her path and new book, Co-Creating with Nature, Healing the Wound of Separation. Please join me in welcoming to Destination Unlimited, Pamela Montgomery. Welcome, Pamela.
Very nice to be here, Victor. Thank you.
Pam, your bio describes you as an herbalist, author, international teacher, earth elder, and new paradigm thinker who has passionately embraced her role as a spokesperson for the green beings and has been investigating plants and their intelligent spiritual nature for more than 3 decades. Please share with us your early path and how this calling manifested for you.
Well, I have that question asked me a lot, and I have to say that it really goes all the way back to when I was a kid, because I was one of the lucky ones that had one of those grandmothers that you just, she's like, you want to gobble her up. She's so incredibly wonderful. And my grandparents, this is my maternal grandparents, and they lived in the eastern hills of Kentucky, so the Appalachian Mountains. And they were, when you say salt of the earth, that's who they were. They were like these people that were just of the land. They didn't live on the land. They were part of the land, and they were just so amazing. So she was a plant person, and she had plants all through the house, and then she had plants all over the place outside. And in the South, you eat your main meal at noontime. So she would spend all morning in the kitchen and cooking and then cleaning it all up. But by around 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, she would come outside and she'd be picking and pruning and, doing everything with her plants. But she would talk the whole time. And so I remember so distinctly going up to her, and I was little. I was, maybe at that point by 7, kind of the curious years. And I said, "Granny, who are you talking to?" And she said, in her very Kentucky accent, she said, "Well, plants are just like people. They need friends too." And so what happened, what was so important about that was that I got the message that you are in relationship with the plants. They're like your friends. And you communicate with them. So as an herbalist, I feel like I got this kind of jump start on. I just assumed that that's the way it was, and I thought that everybody did that. And then as I got older and kind of got in the herbal world, it was like, oh no, not everybody does do that. Not everybody does things that way. So I just felt like I started on this path very early of there's something about the natural world in general, because when I went for my summers to my grandparents' place, I was just outdoors the whole time, and I was in the stream, and I was climbing the trees, and I was being with the plants. So I feel like I've got a real head start because of my grandparents, and they really encouraged all of that. And then as I got older, I just I became really well. What happened was things started to happen in my garden that I couldn't explain, and I got really interested in like there's something else going on here. So I really delved deeply into the biointelligence, I guess, if you want to call it that, of plants. And I got read everything I could get my hands on, and I was having these experiences of. So I realized, and again, this is early on. You know, this was probably early 30s by this point, and I just realized there's a whole lot more than the chemical constituents, just the chemical constituents to these plants. There's a whole lot more going on, and that's what I want to know about. I'm going to delve. So that's what I've done. I just have gone deeply into this. I would have to say that there's the vast intelligence of the plant world. And then of course I'm a real nature girl, so I'm outdoors a lot, and I'm really trying to understand what our part is in nature. Then, we're a part of nature too. We're an animal. We're a part of nature too. And so what does that look like, and how does that play out, and or not, as the case may be. And so anyway, I'm really fascinated by the whole idea of being in partnership, co-creative partnership with nature. So that was kind of a lengthy answer to your question, but that's how it all got started, and it just continues. It continues to unfold.
It's
I'm
a
not done yet.
wonderful. It's a wonderful answer. It's not too long. And interesting point. You said that this really started manifesting for you in your early 30s. And that's second chapter of life. And many of us have a spiritual awakening in the second chapter of life. Do plants have a spiritual awakening in their second chapter?
Oh, yes. Well, okay. So here's the thing between plants and people is that we're very symbiotically related. I mean, we're way more related to plants than we are to other animals. Some may, want to, kind of call me on that one and say, wait a minute, but I mean, we breathe because of plants. I mean, real basic stuff here. This is not rocket science. This is real basic. It's like we breathe oxygen, and the only oxygen on this planet is from plants, trees, and sea vegetables.
Mm.
That's it. And then we breathe out carbon dioxide, which the plants breathe in. So we have this very, just from something as simple and mundane as breathing, we are already in relationship with the plants. But then when you bring it into conscious awareness, you bring it up a notch, and you become very conscious that you're actually breathing in the out breath of another being, and then you're breathing out your out breath, and another being is breathing it in. So there's this cycle of breath between you and another species on this planet. And so it brings it into this like, oh, wow, that's pretty profound. Wow, that's actually, oh, I'm the breath of another being. Oh, that's pretty intimate. So it takes it to a whole nother level. So anyway, but here's the cool thing is that plants have always preceded their animal counterparts in evolution. So for example, angiosperms, which are flowering plants that have internal or have their reproductive organs, you know, intact within the plant, and um, so they evolved before mammals. Mammals are their animal counterpart. And mammals needed something to eat, so angiosperms had to evolve first. So this is the way it's been all through our evolution, is that the plants have always preceded their animal counterparts in evolution. So I look at this and go, okay, well, what is our evolution right now? And if you look at it, it's like around about the 60s, maybe a little earlier than that, but for sure in the 60s, there was this huge explosion of people being interested in plants, mostly, that were open doors of perception. So psychotropic plants, cannabis, ones that just were like, oh, okay, there's another whole dimensional reality here that we haven't tapped into yet. So there was a huge explosion of that in the 60s. And then from there, it was like flower essences, which Edward Bach was the first one to kind of bring them onto the scene. And now there's like hundreds of flower essence companies. And what those are, there's no chemical constituents whatsoever in the product. It is strictly the vibratory resonance of the plant. Some would call that the plant's signature. And it really works kind of like more on an emotional level. And then, some of the work that I've done is with plant spirit healing. So you don't really even have to ingest the plant at all. It has to do with your relation with the plant and how well you can communicate with the plant on what it is that type of healing that needs to be done. Now we're starting to do what's called plant initiations, where the plants are actually stepping up to take the role of the elder. Like in the old days, initiations were young people coming into the tribe, and the elders would be the initiators to these young people, and that's almost completely gone. It doesn't happen anymore, and maybe in some rare places on the planet right now, but it's pretty much. So here we are, a whole cultures full of uninitiated adults, which means we don't know really how to live within the collective sanely, and it's pretty obvious that we don't. And so these plants are just preceding us in our spiritual evolution right now. Or you might want to say our raising of consciousness to the next level where, hopefully we, at least stop killing each other and destroying the planet. So I feel like right now in this evolutionary process of what the plant's evolution is dependent on our evolution. It's always the way it's been. And I feel like we're right on this cusp. The plants are just ahead of us. And if we would start to pay attention to the plants in this way and let them guide us, I feel like we're right on the cusp of a huge leap in consciousness right now.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, it's exciting.
Absolutely. We're going to be discussing your new book, Co-Creating with Nature, Healing the Wound of Separation. But let's start with your previous works. Tell us about what inspired your book, Plant Spirit Healing, A Guide to Working with Plant Consciousness.
Well, as I just mentioned, I went into working I was just interested in this larger aspect of the plants. And I found that when I worked with the plants through communicating, and plants don't communicate like we do. We make these sounds that come out of our mouth. In the biological world, and this is all in the science, in the biological world, the foundational way in which communication takes place is through light and sound that carries a vibration. So it's really this vibratory resonance, and the plants are very good at one of the things that the plants are really good at is they can fine tune their resonance to us easier than we can to them. They're not distracted. They're just being who they are. Whereas we get real distracted by everything else that's going on. And, instead of like paying attention and being present as we sit with plants and we communicate and we experience the vibratory resonance of the plant within our body, we're getting distracted, balancing our checkbook in our head. Plants are not doing that. Plants are just being plants. And so what happens is so the light, there's biophotons at the nucleus of all living organisms have biophotons, particles of light at the nucleus of the cell. Nucleus of the cell is at the DNA level. So when I'm sitting with a plant and I'm being very present, and I'm focusing on that I want to be in communication with this plant, and the plant's easily doing that with me, then what happens is what's the two points of light in the nucleuses of our cells make a beam of light, and they call it a laser. They actually call it a laser beam, and that's called being coherent. And so when we go into coherence, then there's this two-way thing that starts to happen. There's an exchange, and it's an exchange of vibratory resonance. Now, what I have experienced through that is that um, everything really has a vibratory resonance. I mean, if it has a molecular structure, it vibrates. So everything, and then also our thoughts, our feelings, everything really has a vibratory resonance. And what happens when you start to have this exchange is you start to have sensations in your body. You start to, from the sensations, what starts to bubble up are emotional responses to the sensation. You start to be in what I call the daydream of the plant. It's like you are part of the daydream of the plant, and every single thing that's going on around you in your environment is part of that daydream, and all of it has meaning. So you begin to kind of take all these bits and pieces, and they're like puzzle pieces, and start to put them together, and like a picture forms. And so yeah, that's the best I can describe it. It might sound really far out there, but it's not. I just want you to know that we, because of our symbiotic relationship to the plants and our long time association with them, it's that we actually do know how to do this communication with them. It's just that our modern day life is not super supportive, and it creates this like amnesia. It's like we've fallen into this deep amnesia, and we've forgotten that we're actually kin, that the plants are our kin. We wouldn't be here without them. We absolutely wouldn't be alive if it weren't for plants. I mean, we don't make tissue from sunlight. Plants do that. And they're the food. And if we didn't eat the plant, then we ate an animal that ate the plant. So on a physical level, we're totally related, in symbiotic relationship with them. So we actually, it's in our whole makeup. So it's really a remembering process that we actually do know the language of plants. And so, did that answer your question?
Yes, and this is something that indigenous healers and shamans have known for centuries.
Yes. Yes.
And we're
Yes.
catching up.
Many of them never forgot.
That's right.
We forgot. But no, people who live close to the earth, it's like they haven't forgotten how connected they are to nature. It's those of us who have, really gotten entrenched in this modern world that, we're doing the other things that have nothing to do with nature, really. So we've just forgotten. And so it's a remembering process. And how do we do that? Spend time with nature, spend time with the plants, be there with them. I happen to be in Belize right now. I spend my winters in Belize, and I have fallen completely in love with coconut palms. And it's so funny because, I mean, they're kind of like, oh, coconut palms, they're on, they line the beaches, and they're everywhere. They're pretty much everywhere. Well, I have discovered that when you lay underneath these palms and you're completely present with them, and of course there's a key element to laying underneath them. Don't lay directly underneath the coconuts, because they do fall out of those trees, and you don't want one hitting you because they're heavy. So you lay in the middle of, or on the outer edges of. So I have discovered these palm trees that are just magnificent trees. They've got this great big long branches, and then when they, there's always a breeze on the beach, and oh man, they're waving in the breeze, and then I have a friend here, Elaine, and she has a beach farm, and I'm like, oh, a beach farm, uh-huh. And what's that mean? She's got 40 different varieties of coconut palm on her beach farm, and she just lets them drop. She doesn't whack them out of the tree. She just lets them drop. She has enough that drop that she every week she kind of rotates through these coconuts. She makes 3 gallons of coconut oil a week. It's the most exquisite coconut oil you've ever had in your entire life. And she makes coconut milk, and then from the meat of the coconut. Oh my gosh, these coconuts have you could probably just live on coconuts. I'm telling you, they're amazing. Anyway, that's my new love. My new love is palm trees, coconut palms.
And that brings us to your newly published book,
Yes.
Co-Creating with Nature, Healing the Wound of Separation. In this
Mm,
book, you share that being in partnership with nature is our birthright. So
yeah.
many have forgotten this. What are the roots of that forgetfulness?
Well, that's a very good question. I feel well. I mean, there's a lot of things, but I probably was the beginning of agriculture, and now it's being questioned about when that really was. They're making new discoveries that it looks like it was a lot early, a lot further back than what we originally thought. So, up to maybe 12,000 years ago. But it's kind of like when we stopped just hunting and gathering and taking what was just there for us and started putting seeds in the ground. And it was really the beginning of the manipulation of nature. Putting seeds in the ground, not having to move around as much, started storing grains. And, once you start uh, storing things, then you have something that's of value that you use later. And then, of course, it moves into accumulating personal property, having property that's just yours instead of the commons. I mean, way back then, it was. I mean, people started living in little villages, but they would go out together to work the land, and it was held in common. There was no fences. There was none of that, and but that began to change as agriculture, and it got into, like, then it did start to get fenced in, or more likely hedges, and there was domesticated animals, and then it moved into, like, the difference between the wild and the domesticated. And the wild was beyond the pale, is the expression. That was a expression in the British Isles. If you went beyond the pale, what the pale was, like a area of land that kind of was a designated point between your things that you farmed and then what you didn't farm. And when you went beyond the pale, that was like, ooh, there's the wild, and you have to be careful because there's wild animals out there. So people became afraid of the wild, and so it just progressed to um, and then, of course, once you start to own land, and there's, sequestering of resources, and then it's ownership, and then it's like, well, I have more grain than you have. So then it gets to be a power trip, and it just kind of snowballs from there to the point of, then we start to move into empires, and then we get into the empire thing, and where there's oppression, and it usually has to do with the resources of the land. It's like, that's a lot of it. And so um yeah, and then now it's like, I mean, there's been so many empires that have come and gone, and we'll see how that continues on, but it probably will continue. They come and go. And so then corporations become empires, and it just goes on and on. And yeah, and then so, kind of like, once the sovereignty is taken from us, then that's the amnesia really sets in big time. once you're like, you are not your own authority anymore. It's taken from you. And then you start to forget. And then the stories stop being told about, get handed down from generation to generation. And the young people don't even know that what that land used to be and what used to grow on that land, and that there used to be this spring that was so gushing full of pure wild water. It fed the whole village. And the young people don't even know that anymore.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's like, you mention broccoli and kids are like, oh, what's that? And what's that look like? They don't even know what it looks like. So it's just been this progression, and to the point at which once we've lost that and we stop telling the stories of the land, then we don't remember, and it only takes a generation. It takes one generation to forget.
Absolutely. My guest is Pam Montgomery. Her new book, Co-Creating with Nature, Healing the Wound of Separation. Pam, please share with our listeners where they can get your books and find out more about you and your work.
Yes, my website is www.wakeuptonature.com. Wake Up to Nature, just spelled all out, .com. So you can find out what I'm doing and what classes are happening, and you can certainly buy my book there, and I'll sign a copy for you.
And we'll be back with more of Pam after these words on the Om Times Radio Network.
The cutting edge of conscious radio, Om Times Radio, IOM FM. Om Times Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Om Times, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week, Pam Montgomery. Her new book is entitled Co-Creating with Nature, Healing the Wound of Separation. Pam, you say that plants can guide us in living according to our true essential nature. How may we open to that guidance?
My experience has been, I described already, kind of coming into communication. And what happens is that there's like this merge that happens between humans, and the ability is there for a merging to happen. So the way I see it is like the vibratory resonance of the plant. I'm able to identify that through the felt sensation. The felt sensation is a literal sensation, like, tingling in your hands. That's a sensation. So that's what I'm talking about. So I identify through felt sensation the vibratory resonance of the plant that's happening somewhere in my body. My body registers it. I put a handle on it. It's called putting a handle on it, where you, with a few words, you identify it, or it might be a posture, or some way you identify that felt sensation, which is the vibratory resonance of the plant. So then now that you know what that vibratory resonance is, you can be in communication with the plant at any given time, even without the plant being present. So, because you can tap into it through the unified field, I would say. And so what these plants do is when you engage with them on a healing level, what they do is it's like going to the source, which I would say is on a spiritual / energetic level, because energy and spirit works together. Spirit being sentient, energy is just exists. It doesn't, it doesn't get created or destroyed. It just is. So the spirit, the sentient spirit, directs the energy. So it's at that level. And so what happens with these plants is they can go directly to that source level, the spirit/energy level, which is where dis-ease or compromise begins. It begins at that level. By the time it reaches the physical level, it's been hanging around for a very long time. So ideally, you catch it at that level. These plants have the ability to do that. The other thing, this is the other so incredibly cool thing, is that back to the biophotons. So there was a man named Fritz Popp and Albert Fritz Popp. He's passed on now, but he was a German biophysicist, and he was the one that discovered biophotons at the nucleus of the cells of all living organisms. And he did work with plants. And what he did was he found that cells that were compromised or weren't healthy, let's put it that way, and we're talking big stuff like cancer cells. He said that the light at the nucleus of the cell had gone awry, meaning that the pattern of the light was not healthy, was not toward health. It was toward dis-ease. So what he did was he gave the biophotons from certain plants to unhealthy cells. And what happened was the light repatterned toward health. Now, I call that leading edge. This is what plants can do. And it happens at this vibratory level between light and sound. Sound is a part of it too. Light and sound on this biophoton level. They're going right to the source, and they're healing at these source levels. So, okay, that's not your question though. Your question is living according to your true essential nature. So part of this whole helping you to be as healthy as you possibly can, being true to your original blueprint. And our total original blueprint is of brilliance. I mean, we're designed to be quote unquote enlightened because we have all these particles of light at the nucleus of all our cells. We only have 2 intact strands of DNA. We have the potential for 12 intact strands of DNA. Anyway, that's a whole nother big conversation. So what these plants are doing is really helping us to live according to our true essential nature, because they're helping us to come into our own original blueprint of brilliance, and that we are not, you mentioned to me earlier about a little Bible story, and that was kind of cute. But there's this whole thing about original sin, and that we're born into original sin. Well, that came came later. About 300 years after Christ came the Confessions of St. Augustine, was what people are familiar with. St. Augustine, who was a Berber from northern Africa, he was the one who talked about original sin. It's not in the Bible. It was none of the words that Jesus says anyway. So anyway, our original blueprint is of original brilliance. That's who we are. That's really who we are. And these plants help us to live according to our original blueprint, which is that of brilliance. It's of being light beings. And and they help us. I feel like part of our evolution right now is more of our DNA is becoming intact. More strands of DNA are starting to line up. And I think there's even children being born. They call them the blue babies and indigo children and all of that have more intact strands of DNA. So it's all starting to happen. And then epigenetically speaking, if we look at epigenetics, which have to do with gene expression through our environment and our experiences, then within one generation, the DNA expression can change. So I feel like what's happening right now, and it's such an exciting time to be alive, is that more of our DNA is becoming intact. So it's making beams of light because it's in a strand instead of just little points of light. And so I think what's happening is we're actually making use of this DNA. And as we do that, we become more and more enlightened. Our consciousness raises more and more and more. And we really move into who we truly are. And we start to realize that, oh, there's this whole other way of being on this planet where we're interconnected. It's called interbeing, actually. And we're interconnected, we're interdependent, and we actually, and they also use the word interpenetration, which is about the merge, where we have this capability of merging with other species in order to thrive on this planet. All life thrive, not just humans, all life. So it's exciting.
And you talked about this before as plant initiation. You offer the steps for creating and facilitating plant initiation with common plants. Please share with us the basics of that initiation.
Okay, so as I mentioned, initiations are basically originally were young people coming into the tribe and finding their place within the tribe. And usually they would take on new names and all of that. So they knew their place and they knew how to be within that collective atmosphere, the collective tribal atmosphere. And so here we are now, and the plants are stepping up to take on the role of the elder to initiate us into what it means to be truly human, walking the path we came here to walk this time around. That's what they're doing. So this initiation process is one of those ways to answer your previous question of how do we live to our true, how do we live according to our true essential nature? This is one of the ways the plants are teaching us. So basically what we do is the way I'm doing them are 3 days where we are focusing on one plant, and I do not choose the plant. The plant chooses me. The plant steps forward and says, I'm going to be the initiator this year. And so that's who it's going to be. And so we make, and usually it's an ingestible plant. You can do plants that are, that you don't ingest, meaning the physical properties of the plant, but you can work with the flower essence, which there's no chemical constituents in that. So you could do that. But usually we're working with ingestible plants, which means we're creating what I call an elixir of different parts of the plant, different mediums, water, alcohol, hydrosol, which is the byproduct of distillation process. Maybe, if it's got a lot of volatile oils in it, then we might work with the scent of the plant as well. And so we make this elixir, and everything is done in a ceremonial context. So we are in ceremony, in this initiation ceremonially for 3 solid days. And we we do 16 ounces a piece of the elixir. And so we drink like 8 times. We'll do 2 ounces 8 times throughout the 3 days. And then we do all kinds of different things with the plant. We'll do shamanic journeying with the plant. We'll sit with the plant, of course, and do our communication thing. We embody the plant. So like we make masks, and we actually take on the plant. We embody the plant. We have a council. We'll have a count. So if the plant is dandelion, we'll have a council of dandelions around the fire at night, and we speak for dandelion as if we are a dandelion. So we're in council together. We do a process called green breath, which is like transformational breath work, only we're breathing specifically with whatever plant is the initiator. And that is a super powerful process where we've seen spontaneous healings happen during these green breath sessions. We do dismemberment journey. So we do all these, we work with the labyrinth, within the labyrinth with the plant. We work with sound. So we do all these different things with the plant. And by the end of 3 days, I'm telling you, people's lives have changed. And, this plant lives inside you after these initiations, and you come out of them like a different person. It's quite phenomenal. So yeah, that's basically what the initiations are. And there's a whole section in this new book of mine that talks about how to prepare for an initiation, and then the whole process of doing the initiation. And then there's a whole section on plants that we've done initiations with, and what's come from those initiations. And so it's quite powerful, I must say.
I had an inadvertent, what I would call natural initiation with the lovely azaleas in our small front garden that was very healing for me during a time of grieving. It actually inspired a poem that I wrote called The Lesson of the Azaleas. May I share that with you?
Oh, please do.
They return each spring in their full glory, without our hand intending. Leave in 3 weeks a very short story, but no sadness in this ending. For they grace us with signs of summer's return, lifting our spirits with cheer. And we know they'll be back and blossom again, one full turn of the wheel of the year. And the lesson they share with beauty and grace, transition is just nature's way. A reminder we'll all return to this place and blossom on some shining day.
Gosh. That was beautiful, Victor. I love that so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
That got me through the passing of my mother, actually. And
Yes.
that really helped me process that grief and develop a deeper understanding. So thank you for allowing me to share that.
Wow.
In co-creating with nature, healing the wound of separation, you offer 6 principles of developing the co-creative partnership. Please share a short description of these principles that the readers will find in your book.
Yes, and these are just, I feel like I'm just beginning this. This might be just a scratch on the surface, and there may be a whole bunch more principles that others come up with, but these are the ones that have really stuck with me. Well, communication, which of course we've been talking about communication quite a bit, and really discovering the vibratory resonance of the plants. So that's an important one. Whenever you're in a partnership, one of the key ingredients in a really healthy partnership, I would say, is good communication. So that's one. There's also this aspect of self-love, and I say self-love because when you really know how to love yourself, you really need to be able to love yourself before you really can love another. And so there's a whole process of going into self-love. That's one of them. And there's healing the split, which is kind of the same thing as healing the separation. But the split really is where you discover the gifts. Every single person carries gifts. Every single plant carries gifts. We all come in with gifts. And so this is where even when we think, oh, it's a poisonous plant, oh, it gives me a rash, oh, therefore it must be not good. Now, that's not true. It's just that, so we stop looking at it as the enemy, and we realize that, oh, no, oh, well, that poisonous plant actually is a really big protector plant, and it can really help protect us. So that would be an example. So we look at that of the healing of the split. And then there's the thing about trust and how important it is for us to trust our own. I call it the first voice. It's like that primal knowing, like that which it just is the first little thing that comes. That's the first voice. And so it's super important that we go into our work with these plants, realizing that we can totally trust the plants. The plants are not going to lie to us. They do not do that. And so when we receive these touches from the plants, or these insights, or our intuitions from the plants, we can trust that. So yeah. And then there's this piece about time. And this has been so valuable for me, is that we've got external time, which rules our lives, and then we've got internal time. And the internal time is like, being in your own rhythm. What is your rhythm, and what is your rhythm with nature? The tendency is, when you spend time in nature, quite a bit of it, then you get on the same rhythm, in the same sync as nature. And what internal rhythm does, or internal time does, is it really helps you to be present. You're not thinking about the future, and you're not dwelling in the past. You just become in the present. And in that present moment is where the magic happens. And you can like step into that interdimensional reality. It's so incredible. And this whole thing of external time, I think, has been one of the big ways in which separation has happened, that we've gone into the amnesia, is we're just on the clock all the time, and it's helped made us forget. And then there's, of course, joyful encounter. And joyful encounter is just exactly as it says, is this interacting with nature in this way, this coming back into the fold, this realizing that we're a part of nature and that we can be in a co-creative partnership together. It is joyful and it's so much fun. And we have these like wow moments or aha moments in nature. And here we are just really being in this space of joy. And what better place to be? And so plants bring us to that place. And
Absolutely.
so
My guest is Pam Montgomery. Her book, Co-Creating with Nature, Healing the Wound of Separation. We'll be back with more after these words on the Om Times Radio Network.
Humanity Healing International is a small nonprofit with a big dream. Since 2007, HHI has been working tirelessly to bring help to communities with little or no hope. Our projects are not broad mandates, nor are they overnight solutions, but they bring the reassurance that no one is alone and that someone cares. To learn more, please visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of Om Times Magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going Om. My passion is sifting through information, research and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers and researchers pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
So I'm a cat, and I just moved in with this new human, and she's got this little toy she's always playing with, all day long. Tap, 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 bloop, bloop. She can't put it down. There it is. Oh, and get this. She even talks to it. Last week she asked it for Chinese, and guess what? Egg rolls showed up. Like magic. Humans have cool toys.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
Hi, this is Bill Maher. I can find humor in almost anything, but one thing I never laugh about is cruelty to animals. If you don't get the joke either, write People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, 501 Front Street, Norfolk, Virginia, 23510.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week, Pam Montgomery, her new book, Co-Creating with Nature, Healing the Wound of Separation. Pam, you offer meditations as a means of connecting with plant energy and nature. Is there one that stands out for you?
oh my gosh. Well, there's a lot. I mean, it depends on how detailed you want to get here, but let's start at the very foundational level, I'll call it, which is your breath. And so I do this a lot with lots of people, but especially anybody new to like this kind of work, or somebody who might, I'll just keep it at that. Anybody who might be new to this. And really it's, so let's just take a minute and just, breathing in and just be breathing deeply in, bring it all the way down into your lower belly. And then breathing out and just feel that nice rhythm of breath. And maybe you have a special tree that comes to mind, or a plant, or maybe one of your house plants even, that you might want to just bring them into your conscious awareness. And as you breathe in oxygen, you become aware that your plant or tree is breathing out oxygen as you take your in-breath of oxygen. And then as you breathe out carbon dioxide, and you become aware that your plant or tree is breathing in carbon dioxide. And now, as you realize that you are in a cycle of breath with your plant or your tree, breathing in oxygen, which is the plant's or tree's out breath, breathing out carbon dioxide, which is the plant or tree's in breath, cycle of breath with another being every second of every minute of every hour of every day. You are in this cycle of breath with the green beings. These green beings give you your very life. Feel how connected you are through your breath. You're the breath of another being. You share breath with another being. Feel how intimate this is. Realizing that you are in deep relationship to this plant and tree because they give you your very breath, your very life. And taking one more nice deep breath, being in gratitude for the gift being given to you by your plant or tree. Coming back into your awareness now. Into this lovely chat that we're having. Now, you can do this type of breathing anytime because you've always got your breath right with you. So this is a simple meditation that brings you to a whole nother level of consciousness with the green world. Plants, trees, sea vegetables.
Beautiful.
And everybody can do it. And it's simple. You can stand in the grocery line and do this even. All you have to do is bring into your awareness, bring into your mind's eye or into your heart a favorite tree or a favorite plant. Or if you love seaweed, then bring that one in too. Beautiful. It is simple and at the same time incredibly profound.
You touched upon the expression heart coherence. Please tell us what this means and how it applies to all of this work.
Right. Well, our heart is the primary organ of perception, and some may think it's our brain, but it is not. The heart is what does all the perceiving, receives all the data, brings it into the heart. Ideally, you are in coherence with internally, meaning that, again, you're making this between all of your cells. You're connecting all of your biophotons together, making these coherent pathways, I'm going to say, of light, thus vibratory resonance energy. And the ideal is that you are in total coherence with both your gut. So we've got three areas of intelligence. We have our heart intelligence, we have our gut intelligence, which is instinct, heart being on our emotional intuitive level. Then we have our brain intelligence, which is the intellect. So ideally, these three are in sync together. And so your heart in coherence helps you to instinctually know things. That's probably your gut is your instinctual brain or intelligence or brilliance, if you will. And that really helps you be super in touch with nature, is on an instinctual level. And so your heart helps you become coherent with your instinctual self and with your intellect. So your heart tells your brain, your heart says, okay, I'm going to decide, this is the decision I'm going to make about all this data I have received. Here's the decision. The heart makes the decision, sends that decision to the brain, says, here's what I've decided. Now the brain does what it's designed to do, which is carry out the decision. That's what the brain is designed to do. The brain is not designed to make the decision. I need to be really clear about this because we think sometimes that, if we just make a decision in our brain, well, no, it doesn't always work out that well. So make your decision with your heart. So that's what coherence is. I mean, that's a real, that's the 25-cent version. There's a whole book called The Heart Math Solution that talks about heart coherence. And if you really want to go into it deeply, that's a fabulous book. They're an incredible organization that have done a ton of work with heart coherence. So, but the heart is the big kahuna, and that's we need to have the heart sitting on the throne making the decisions.
The Green Wisdom of Pam Montgomery, her book, Co-Creating with Nature, Healing the Wound of Separation. Pam, one more time, please share with our listeners where they can get your books and find out more about you and your wonderful work.
They can go to my website, wakeuptonature.com, and you can learn what kind of classes are going on, and you can buy my book there, and I will sign it for you.
Pam, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your experience, your wisdom, and your big heart.
You are so welcome.
And thank you for joining us on Destination Unlimited. I'm Victor, the Voice Furman. Have a wonderful week.